And so you'll be able to get a host of information, and they track on what's happening. So they've been tracking on the Marine Board and the rulings. And as the public, we have the opportunity to testify. So just making sure that anybody that wants to share the river, that their voice is heard,
right.
Not ban and restricting things in our backyard so we can't, say hi to our neighbors and, have fun as we normally would do.
Sure.
Obviously with safety and respect, but the other piece now that is coming down right now is the legislative piece. They held a special session to create these bills. And so they're just now in the Natural Resources Committee. And so, and I'm happy to provide any additional details on that, but
people
can essentially support by sending in, their perspective of, what they feel about these bills, or if they're, opposed, or
and who would they send it
specifically to the committee. So the Natural Resources Committee, it is under Representative Witt. He is the chair, and there are, I think, 5 or 6 members. I would have to confirm specifically and get back to you.
Yeah, you can send me that info, and I can post it.
Great. That's kind of
right. I just want for like to pull back a little bit for perspective. I'm growing up in Florida. There were a lot of no wake zones and things like that on the waterways to protect the docks. It's kind of something that was normal for me, and we're one of the people that joined in on the river activity, as I mentioned to you, by getting a boat last summer. And so, the increased population combined with, when I was growing up, boats didn't kick up the wakes that they do now.
Right.
It's so different now. And some of those boats do kick up, pretty big wakes. Like even though I'm now a boater and we do towed sports and have a lot of fun doing it, I can understand the perspective of people who are doing paddle sports. Like there's sometimes I feel bad for them as the morning gets later into kind of midday. There are times where wow, they're getting beaten up pretty good especially if it's a weekend. So I get where, I'm not just coming at it from the boater side. I get where somebody else is coming from too. But I do.
And I think that's
go ahead, Erin.
Part of the problem. I was just saying, I think that's part of the problem is that we have so many different users. My kids love to kayak and paddleboard and, just get out on the river. And so a lot of people believe that there's a way to coexist. And if we just find a way to, what does that look like from a traffic perspective? There have been talks of, paddling on the sides of the river so that boats can be more in the center and wakes can dissipate. There is the rule generally that you would have to be 100 feet off of a dock. And obviously that's just general, I think, respect.
Yeah.
And so when you have boats and various activities, how do you coexist together? And like you said, the boats have changed, or some of the sports have changed. And so there are just a lot of different elements, but in the same sort of sense, we water ski, and we generally only do it in the morning because
it's smooth, right?
Yeah, it's smooth. There's not a lot of activity, and obviously wind really kicks up quite a bit too during the summer on certain days, and so you just try to get the water that's not choppy. And so I would look at it like the same sort of sense. If you're rowing crew, they generally go in the morning, but out here you often see them in the afternoons, and it gets quite busy just from all traffic and stuff like that. So I think that just really kind of coming together and figuring out what works best for everybody.
Yeah, for competing interests, right?
Yeah, I think so, because I think ultimately we all want to, share the river, but you don't want anybody to feel like they're at risk or it's dangerous. And so,
do you feel like they really didn't quite hit the mark in doing that and like really trying to come together and see what works for everyone? Do you feel like they didn't?
I do, because it sounds like the Lower River Rule Committee, I just feel like it's a tongue twister for some reason.
Yeah.
But they had, I don't even know, 24, 25 members of people from a diverse group, commercial, just
how did they choose these people?
The Marine Board did.
Okay.
So I'm not really sure on that specifically, but they were a diverse group, and their unanimous, vote at the end was education, greater law enforcement, and greater signage. Because, even to support existing rules, there's a lot of confusion. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, you want to hold people accountable for their actions. Again, if you want any behavior to change, or, you kind of, that needs to be a component. So it was, basically denied. They might do some extra signage for the new rules. But I'm not sure that the whole component of really that piece, I think, is confusing to some people, why that hasn't been a part of it.
Yeah.
And also the voices of the people, that haven't been heard, or are not really aware of all this going on.
I wasn't aware of it until you reached out to me.
Yeah. It's quite a big thing. And the fact that this has been a process for 18 months, and, I live actually on the river, and I found out about the rule, or I guess the House bill that passed on the Upper Willamette after it already happened in the whole process. And so I just thought, how is that possible that I don't even know about these things going on? And it's really difficult, because you have, if you're a motorized boater, there aren't really organizations or groups such as paddling clubs, and, mm-hmm. there's sort of a different sort of semblance of coming together. Yeah. And so I think we're a little behind on getting that knowledge and information, but I do hope in the future, really collectively, people can come to the table and identify all the risks, because the businesses have been pretty vocal, and
which businesses would that be? Like the marinas, like places where people gas up on the river, or would it be other ones as well?
There are, yes, all of those, and you have even like the jet boats downtown, or there's a SK Rentals, and then they also have, active water sports. You have a number of businesses. They said there was quite a bit of small businesses mm-hmm. that would be affected negatively, and it would be pretty excessive for some. But the Marine Board confirmed that in their last ruling, and said that they didn't see any other way around it. So it's unfortunate that this, these rules will greatly impact a number of things, including possibly, property values to, mm-hmm. The businesses in our backyard. So,
and it was a close vote, right? It was a 3-2 vote on the Marine Board.
Yes, both time 3-2 vote. And the last, so there were 2 votes, that ultimately made up these rules. And the last vote was a unique setting. I'm not sure it's ever happened before, but there was another proposal that was, really kind of some of the boating community came together to try to work with all the users and come up with something that would work and not be so restrictive and just an all right ban. Some people have talked about, well, there's some bad behavior, but that doesn't mean you ban all activity on motorized boats,
It does seem, quite restrictive.
Yeah. And so they decided during this meeting, they voted, should we do a special session and take some time to review this new proposal and not vote on this current one, the 100 to 300 and shutting down another pass-through zone. And so they voted yes, that they would not make a ruling and that they would hold to consider this other proposal. But they came back from break, and I don't know what conversations were had, but they decided to just go ahead and vote the ruling through.
Really?
So it's confusing.
That's procedurally, that's odd. I don't know the ins and outs of, their procedure.
Yeah,
but,
neither do I.
Who makes up the Marine Board?
So they are volunteers appointed by Governor Brown. And so, ultimately they're chosen. There are, they're from all over Oregon.
Yeah.
And I think, they just have different backgrounds. For example, one of the board members, she is, I believe, a coach for a canoe team and the president of a rowing club.
Yeah.
And so, people are active in different sort of areas and, have different perspectives.
Right. So maybe some perspectives had more of a voice than others, perhaps. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. In this case, it certainly did. And so, we kind of have these new rules. I think I have to mention that the pass-through zones, which no towed sports at all, nearly 4 miles, that is from May 1st to September 30th. So effectively the boating season.
Right. So, and that's mostly around the Ross Island area, right?
Yeah. It's kind of that whole sort of stretch, basically from Hawthorne to, the Ross Island area. But also worth noting that they, that on the other side, of Ross Island, the whole Gate Channel
is
an area where part of it was a no-wake zone specifically for non-motorized, sports. And they also voted that to be entirely a no-wake zone. So, people that don't want, any sort of waves or want to, enjoy various non-motorized activities have that spot in addition to the 3.9 miles. And then obviously there isn't going to be much, I think, activity as it is with the distance rules. So it will be a different river for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And so just so people are clear, the pass-through zone around that Ross Island area, what that means is you have to go from point A to point B, no like loops and circles and hanging out. If you're in a motorized boat, you have to there's no towing of any kind, no wakeboarding, tubes, surfing, and you just have to get from point A to point B. You don't have to go slow, but you have to go straight through.
Correct. Yeah. And I think that there's no speed limit. But that's just a restriction on actually doing towed sports.